You're the owner of a small business, which means you're also the tech guy, and HR, and personal assistant, and head honcho, and intern. You could use another pair of hands, like the experts you'll find at Verizon Small Business Days, April 21st through 27th. Get a free tech check, special deals, and more. Call 1-800-483-4428 or visit verizon.com/smallbusiness to book your appointment. Verizon Business.
At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Oh, you caught me on the hop there, Kieran. Your 3-2-1 go came a bit quicker than usual. I was doodling. How are you, Kieran, on this proper blustery Winnie the Pooh day today?
It is indeed. Yeah, all is good. Spreadsheets being updated. Given it's a university vacation time, but I've arranged additional classes during Easter because my football finance students they've got. I'm the big bad teacher. They've got to hand in their assignments when we go back at towards the start of next term. So I'm still beaming away at them, grinning away inanely. They're great. It's a delight. University is a wonderful thing and deserves protecting and preservation from vested interests, in my view.
Yeah, and if only more people had access to it without having to pay a bleaking fortune, it would be lovely, wouldn't it? But that's for a different part. I don't want to worry you, Kieran, by the way, but there are some black clouds overhead. I mean, actual physical, not metaphorical, as is usual with me. And they seem to be heading south, so you might like to get the ducklings in.
Oh, lordy. Yes, they're not allowed to swim for another 2 weeks, I think.
Are they? That seems a bit cruel.
We've been told not to put them in water, which I think, what's the point of having ducklings if you can't let them swim? You know, I had the paddling pool all set up.
Oh, I didn't know ducklings came with instructions. Do not put. There's nothing lovelier. I mean, you know, I hate spring and summer, but one consolations is seeing the little ducklings in the following mum along in the it's a beautiful sight.
A duck flotilla is
absolutely
a wonderful thing.
Also, the sound of a pond or a lake is wonderful. The sound of the waterfowl and the dabbling, and this suddenly, I don't think there's anything funnier than seeing a duck's bum suddenly appear in the air. It's news day today, Kieran. There's a lot of people getting sued in today's news. None of them us, which is a pleasant change.
It is indeed.
Which that's as much as I'm allowed to say at the moment. This first story, Kieran, it's about agents fee. We were discussing agents fees just a couple of weeks ago, and lo and behold, the Premier League have revealed how much has been spent on it. It's almost like the Premier League are listening to every word we say for some reason, Kieran. I don't know, but it's. I thought this was an astonishing amount, but it turns out it's less than previous years.
That's right. It's actually the Football Association. They publish a league table of agents fees, except they publish it alphabetically, which isn't the best way for a graph. It does give me opportunities for yet another spreadsheet to be added to my canon of work. And between February, effectively the 1st of February 24 and the 31st of January 25, Premier League clubs spent £409 million. I know he's not on your Christmas card list, but Simon Jordan actually summarised this quite well on TalkSport, and I must confess that I'm actually in alignment with his views. So what? Is my view. So £409 million. So a lot of people get angry and say, well, is this the reason why we're paying higher ticket prices? And the simple answer is no, it isn't. You don't hear complaints from the clubs about agents. Well, about the good agents, because they do a job. And I'm very privileged that I teach for the Professional Footballers Association. So I teach them twice a week at present, and they're fantastic young men and women who want to enhance their knowledge of the industry, which is absolutely great. And again, I've never had any grumbles about agents, and the subject does come up as part of the module that I teach. So why are we not getting complaints from people within the industry itself? I just want to give you a couple of examples. Mo Salah has just signed a 2-year extension at Liverpool Football Club, and his agent would have been involved in those negotiations. Now, Mo Salah is, as we know, an absolutely brilliant footballer. Let's look at the stakeholders in this deal. Mo Salah gets a 2-year contract, and he will be paid handsomely during that 2 years. His club gets his services for 2 years. And it could be that in a year's time, they might say, actually, Mo, if you do want to leave, you feel free to do so with our blessing, and they will get a substantial fee. Whereas if they hadn't had that contract extension negotiated by his agent, then he would have left for nothing in June. From the point of view of the fans get to see Mo Salah play for Liverpool Football Club. If we take the case of Erling Haaland, who we spoke about his contract extension to the 30th of June 2034, some of the clauses in his initial contract have been removed. This preserves his value to Manchester City, and they can now charge full market price for him. He gets the security of a long-term contract. He gets a pay rise. If you take a look at two of the biggest domestic transfers in this country, Jack Grealish and Moises Caicedo, well, their agents renegotiated contracts with the club, which removed clauses where perhaps they could move for a particular fee. So therefore, it allowed the club to generate more money. So I understand people getting upset by agents, and certainly Eric Hall, who by all accounts was a really good agent for his clients. I think Freddie Mercury and Queen were.
He came out of the music industry. He looked after.
That's right.
He looked after the Sex Pistols. He was responsible for booking them on that infamous Today programme. When they swore away through, yeah.
Oh yes, one of the most iconic pieces of who was it? Was it Bill Grundy?
Bill Grundy, yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't iconic for him because his career is over in 3 months, but it was iconic for the Sex Pistols and Susie Sue, who was busy chewing in the background, yes.
Yes, it was. So that's why you don't tend to hear noises against agents from the industry itself, because all of these clubs have managed to generate extra benefits. Liverpool Football Club now don't have to go out in this summer's market to try to recruit another striker of the calibre of Mo Salah. That would be costing them at least 80 or 90 million, and there's no guarantee that the incoming player would be able to match his contribution. So there are substantial fees. The industry appears to suggest that those fees are warranted. If the agent is working on behalf of the player as well, then the player does, certainly for tax reasons, tax purposes, that gets treated as a benefit in kind. So the player ends up paying tax on that as well. So that's the position. As well as substantial amounts being paid in the Premier League, going all the way down to the National League. I think that was pretty high. I think also in the WSL, substantial. I think it was over £2 million of agents' fees being paid in the WSL, which was pretty similar to what we saw in League Two. So it is indicative of transfers and negotiations. And now, I think all of the focus, in agents is in relation to players coming in. But if you take a look at Leeds United, who paid the highest amount of agents' fees in the Championship last season, they were relegated from the Premier League in 2023. They had players who they had to get rid of in order to be compliant with PSR. The agents managed to find appropriate clubs for them as far as the club was concerned. So therefore, Leeds were happy because Jorginho left, Archie Gray left, and it meant that Leeds were compliant with the rules. And on the back of that, Leeds are in position A, should we say, when it comes to being promoted to the Premier League this season. So that's the issue. And look, you've got an agent, you've got a professional relationship.
Yeah.
When I sold my house, what did I do? I used an agent. I didn't resent it. For me, it was they could do it far better than I could, and they could do the stuff that I didn't want to do and allow me to get on with updating my spreadsheet and the normal nonsense that I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, there's a few things I'd like to unpack there, Kieran. And this is going to be kind of circular. I'm trying to work out the best way to do it. So I worked with Eric Hall several times. He was a fascinating, in inverted commas, man. Although it's always that fine line between character and nuisance.
Yes, I can imagine that.
But the players loved him. But he was the first person to recognise that players could make money out of image rights, being paid for personal appearances, TV punditry, etc. So of course they loved him. But he also set the template, I think, for how most football fans think of an agent now. He had the big cigar, he had the chops, so to speak. He demanded money for every single thing that he did. And it's interesting. We've had several messages, several correspondence recently, all very measured and very well argued, but saying they were disappointed with us because recently they think we haven't condemned players' wages as much as we should have done, because we've both said, well, look, they earn what they're valued at, basically, and that happens in my industry as well. But I do genuinely think that most football fans don't resent players getting money. I generally think they don't. I disagree with those people that say that players' wages are destroying the game. But most football fans do resent agents getting money.
Yes.
They really do resent agents getting money. And that's partly down to the image created by Eric Hall. And thirdly, when it comes to Simon Jordan, his attitude to agents wasn't always that laissez-faire, because certainly when we tried to sign Tim Cahill, he refused to pay. Tim Cahill's agent tried to include the 5% fee that Tim Cahill should have paid him in the money that Palace should pay, and Simon Jordan refused to pay that, which is a laudable situation at the time. But if we'd signed Tim Cahill, we may not have been relegated. So it's a strange one, and there's always going to be people who disagree with it. There will always be people who say Premier League players are paid too much money. That's why I hate the Premier League. But most people will say, no, it's the agents. Premier League players are working class lads doing exactly what anyone else would do if they were offered all that money.
Yeah, I'm unaware of anybody who has ever gone into a meeting where somebody has offered them a lot of money and they say, thanks, but no thanks, I'd rather have less. Because your first loyalty in life is towards your family and your future. And we talk about loyalty in football because we as fans are loyal, but we're not loyal to players. There have been, at present, there's a big debate amongst Brighton fans about Lewis Dunk, and people are saying, oh, he's crap, get rid of him. Hold on, I know as a Palace fan, you don't like Lewis Dunk, and that's absolutely. And we were exactly the same about Wilf. It was.
Yeah.
But you sort of had that grudging respect for the player, and if you have a few bad games, then the pitchforks are out. So fans are not loyal to players. Why, therefore, should fans expect players to take a discount on what the club has offered? Remember, it is the club that makes the offer when it comes to wages. And it is the player's option or the player's representative to advise the player whether or not to accept that offer or not. So it is a strange, and so, we, through doing this show, we've got to know agents in a different environment. Some of them are incredibly professional. I would urge fans, if they get the chance, to read the book The Secret Agent, and it's not a glamorous it's a cutthroat, horrible industry, but that reflects football itself. And you work in the entertainment industry. It's like that in many regards. So I do wonder, why is the Football Association putting out this data? What's the benefit to the FA itself? Is it a bit like the position that we have whereby the BBC are obliged to put out the salaries of presenters? Because, so what? ITV don't, Channel 4 don't, GB News don't. So why are we singling out one institution? Rugby clubs don't put out what they pay to agents. It does seem just a very strange thing. And there are some really good agents there who genuinely care about the welfare of their clients. And there are scumbags out there who just see especially a young child or a young man or woman as an opportunity to make some money for themselves. And that's the same in every industry.
Yeah. The answer to the BBC question is simple as license fee, dear boy. It's we're technically paying the wages of those presenters, so it's in the public interest to know. Whereas ITV, it's the advertisers paying the wages of their presenters, so there is no public interest apparently. Cracking game of football last night, Kieran. Villa PSG. I can't remember enjoying a game of football, even though I watched it 20 minutes behind, and I was so disciplined I wouldn't fast forward it, but it was brilliant. And hopefully,
have you got Now TV?
Now TV, I don't know. Probably we seem to have everything.
Oh well, no. If you do have Now TV, watching it 20 minutes behind is the norm.
Oh, is
Such is the crap signal that you get. Yes. It's now been renamed in my WhatsApp group as Then TV. It's a WhatsApp mess. You can't watch a match on with your mates on WhatsApp because you'll get the goals coming in before. Yeah. What's that? Oh, fuck's sake! Oh, he scored.
Then TV would be a brilliant new name for the History Channel, wouldn't it? Then
that
TV
would be superb.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a long-winded way of saying hopefully Kylian Mbappé will be involved in a match of just as much as excitement tonight. But Kylian Mbappe's got a bit of legal excitement of his own going on.
That's right. I think it's fair to say that the parting of the ways between Kylian Mbappé and Paris Saint-Germain was not very amicable. By all accounts, Kylian Mbappé, his representatives say that he agreed to stay for an additional year before leaving PSG to sign on a Bosman deal for Real Madrid. And they are claiming 55 million euros in unpaid wages and bonuses, effectively loyalty bonuses, I think, most of this. They are attempting to seize PSG's bank account to effectively freeze it, to try to restrict PSG. PSG are, I think the phrase is coming out swinging in terms of their response. So they are saying that it has to be determined by the French Football Federation, who say that the claim is inadmissible. And the most recent comment we've had from PSG is as follows. After hearing, yet another fantastic story from a parallel universe today. PSG continues to fail to understand why Kylian Mbappé is not taking his case to the Labour Chamber, which is the only court competent to settle the dispute between him and his former club. Now, both parties appear to be saying, we want to reach a settlement out of court, we want to mediate, and of course our very good friend of the show, Nick DeMarco, has said, mediation is far less painful, quicker and cheaper than litigation. So it's now reached the name calling phase of things, and so occasionally you do get differences of opinion between legal parties and completely innocent other parties, and some of the wording used is quite aggressive. So it does appear that we've got a bit of a bifters here taking place. Who's going to win this? The lawyers. We can say that with a fair degree of confidence.
I suppose the problem is, and this does come back to those people who say we should complain more about the wages of top players. It's hard to tell between Kylian Mbappé and Paris Saint-Germain to who 55 million euros means less. Really, I mean, it's literally, it's like me and you arguing over 15 quid, basically. But it's one. It's not. I just like the idea of the old season freeze. Doing the old season freeze.
When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Sheffield Wednesday, Kieran, without ever being of too much concern, has certainly been on our list recently, and Sheffield Wednesday fans are upping their peaceful protests, it has to be stressed, against the owner. And the owner, Mr. Chansiri, seems to be saying this week that he would go, but he can't find anyone to buy the club.
Yes, this is a classic. And first of all, fair play to Wednesday fans. I think we are seeing an awful lot of fan activism. I believe that Reading fans are planning a protest this weekend. I think they're playing at home to Lincoln City on Easter Friday. And again, sort of from the Reading fans that I've had contact with, they're going down the right route. Non-violent, direct action, make it entertaining, make it content friendly. And the chances are that the local TV station, I'm hoping that things are going to improve for Reading, as we all do, of course. Also, in terms of fan activism, I think we've got to give a huge tip of the hat to Manchester City fans for their walkout recently, which has now resulted in a U-turn by the Manchester City owners and a freezing of ticket prices, of season ticket prices for next season. Again, City fans were very well organised when Manchester City tried to impose car parking fees for disabled fans, and the club, I think the club does listen, whereas it's a shame to say that there's some awfully committed Manchester United fans as well who have tried similar, but they're up against a tin ear at Old Trafford. It's a long way from Old Trafford to Monaco and Miami in order to get decisions taken into account. But what we've had is Dejan Chansiri is owed, or was owed, at the 30th of June 2024. He was owed £61 million. He'd lent money to the club, and he'd lent £10 million in the year. We're aware that Sheffield Wednesday were late in paying wages in March, which is pretty unforgivable in my view. And they have subsequently been paid, it has to be pointed out. So the chances are the reason why they couldn't pay the wages is because there wasn't enough money in the bank account to do so, and therefore he's had to go and find some more money. So he's probably into the club for 70 or 80 million. He said there is no substantial interest in the club. That surprises me. Now, Sheffield United was sold earlier this year. I'm certainly aware of interest in other clubs. Sheffield Wednesday would be a very attractive proposition to an investor. Proper football city, proper football club, iconic. I think we both remember the year when they got to both cup finals.
Yeah,
against Arsenal. What was it? About 93, 94, whenever it was.
Big fan base.
Yeah. So there are so many things that we would look on from an investor point of view, especially American investors who are still, I think, enthusiastic. So when he says that there's no substantial interest, what I suspect he means is that there's no substantial interest at the price that he's asking for.
Ah, okay.
Because everything has its appropriate price. I suspect he's trying to get this 60, 70 million pounds that he's put in. And he has put money into the club. And Wednesday fans will acknowledge that. I think their argument will be he has put money in quantitatively on a qualitative basis, and this is an accusation which I think is valid for many clubs. It's not been well spent. Now, how much of that is his responsibility? How much is this a classic case of a person with no experience of the football industry is a bit naive, and therefore, as we were saying earlier, there are many good people in the football industry. There are many malevolent ones who are looking after their personal interests, and certainly I've got a few tales from Wednesday going way back when, especially in the initial years of Chansiri, which suggests that he was simply being taken advantage of. He's naive rather than evil, would be my view.
Just briefly, Kieran, you mentioned in passing that you were hoping that the Reading outcome was going to be more positive. Was that a coded message? Do you? Is that only hope, or have you heard something that might give Reading fans some encouragement?
I think there's ongoing negotiations. There's conversations taking place. So we just hope that those conversations are positive. My worry at all times with Reading Football Club is that I think we have been at situations before whereby perhaps a party thought that a deal was done and all that was needed was for to go through the fine print and sign off, and then it collapses. When I was young, I often was under the opinion that I was meeting somebody on a date only to go home alone and arrive alone.
Well, that's possibly because you said I'll meet you under the floodlight at Hartlepool.
That's true.
That might be what. This is an interesting one, Kieran, about winners and losers at Chelsea financially.
Yes. First of all, congratulations to Chelsea Football Club for publishing a record £128 million in pre-tax profits in the most recent financial statements. An incredible achievement, and I give them my hat tipped. I then took a look at the accounts of Chelsea's parent company, 22 Holdco. Now, 22 Holdco owns both Chelsea Football Club and the other part of the multi-club model, Strasbourg. Fantastic football club in their own right. And Chelsea generate 90% of the revenue of 22 Holdco. So, that's simply showing that Chelsea is a global brand. It's got the benefits of the Premier League behind it. Strasbourg, great football club in its own right, but compared to Chelsea, a much smaller entity. But Chelsea made profits of £128 million. 22 Holdco took that profit of £128 million and says, hold my beer, here's £473 million of losses. So you go, blimey. So of course the initial, so they went from £128 million profit to a £473 million loss. They've made a loss of £678 million. So this is Todd Bowley's group, which was set up. It's called 22. I presume 22 refers to the year in which the company was created, as opposed to Todd Bowley economics, which appears to seem like that 2 plus 2 equals 22. So how on earth can this be the case? It can't. Surely those losses can't have been incurred by Strasbourg, and the answer to that is no. And I'm not here to give an accountancy lecture, but this is how it's worked. We know that Chelsea sold the women's team to another part of the group. So it's a bit like, I don't know why I'm doing this visually, because I know this is audio pocket. You can vouch the fact that I'm holding a pen in my left hand, and I'm now going to transfer that pen to my right hand, and I'm going to charge myself £100 million. So my left hand is better off by £100 million. My right hand is worse off by £100 million. But as both hands belong to me, there's been nothing's happened. So this is what's happened with Chelsea and the sale of the women's team. That Chelsea have made money because they have transferred the women's team effectively from left hand to right hand. But Chelsea, which is the whole thing, 22 Holdco, which is the whole thing, nothing has happened, and therefore there are no profits. So there's that, and there's a few other weird and wonderful bits of accounting chicanery, in the sense that 22 Holdco borrowed huge amounts of money, and they paid £100 million in interest on those loans during the year. But when they invested in Chelsea, that money was invested in the form of shares. So therefore Chelsea have borne nothing, zero, of those interest costs. So all I'm saying here is that, in my opinion, the Premier League rules are not fit for purpose, because they allow and they encourage this. And people always say, well, will the independent regulator improve these things? My view is possibly not, because if the Premier League are able to lobby and get effectively their chosen person in, it could be that those rules will be retained and there'll be no pressure. I think there's a huge case for the Premier League to adopt the rules of UEFA, because this sale of the women's team, the sale of the hotels the previous year, and other real estate transactions by Chelsea would not be allowed under UEFA legislation.
But presumably, though, Kieran, from 22 Holdco's perspective, for FFP reasons, it's more important that the club posts the profits than 22 Holdco, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's simply taking advantage of weaknesses in the rules.
Yeah. So I think we should stress that Chelsea have done
nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong at all.
Yeah.
Exactly so. And from a Chelsea point of view, what they've done is actually understandable.
Oh, yeah. I teach creative accounting. This is the type of thing you look at. You look at it in other industries all the time. So I think it's Tesla. And we're not going to have a discussion about Elon Musk, but Tesla seems to make the vast majority of its European profits in the Netherlands. The Netherlands happens to have a low rate of corporation tax. Everybody does it. I'm not saying it's you can take a moral view on it, and you can take an ethical view on it, and whatever. But them's the rules, and that's what the accountants and the lawyers say. But we're not making the rules. We're simply taking advantage of the rules in their current form.
Somebody else being sued, Kieran, is the co-owner of my club, Crystal Palace, John Textor.
Yes, he is. He's being sued by Bruno Lage, the non-manager of Crystal Palace Football Club, and also the non-manager of Lyon Football Club, but the former owner of Botafogo in Brazil, which is part of the Textor empire, the companies which are owned either wholly or partially by Eagle Football Holdings. So why is this happening? Well, according to Bruno, he was promised the job of manager of either Lyon or Crystal Palace by Eagle Football Holdings stroke John Textor when he took the Botafogo job. And again, according to Bruno Lage, Lager, I don't know how to pronounce this, that if he was not appointed into either of those positions by the end of April 2024, he was entitled to £6 million in compensation. I think it's fair to say that Eagle Holdings are contesting this. So it is making progress of sorts. And again, if it does reach courts, it will be messy and expensive. So one would hope there'll be some form of mediation process taking place to prevent that. But John Textor does appear to be an individual who gets himself into disputes, and sometimes it's better to take your foot off the gas and just take things easy. But why make such a bizarre promise in the first place, given that both Lyon and Palace had managers, and of course you know, when Roy Hodgson decided to step aside, you appointed a new manager because that was a decision made by the board of directors. So why does John Textor seem to think that he can determine and dictate Crystal Palace's recruitment policy when it comes to a manager, given that there's three other partners who are involved in the decision-making process?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't know how to pronounce Bruno Lage properly, because I think we got through three different attempts in it. I'm also pretty sure we're not pronouncing Botafogo either. We'll have to... John Textor for Palace, he really is like the unruly toddler that you want to like, but it also drives you up the wall because, there's all sorts of gossip at Palace at the moment. We're all experts on civil engineering now and how the new stand's going to be built. And obviously, the more money John Textor's losing in court, the more money Palace are losing. But it just strikes me as it's like me in the Portsmouth Arms going, yeah, you can present price of football, be fine. I don't think anyone will worry about that, and you can have 600,000 quid if you're not presenting it. It's just Chelsea, as we just discussed, have been finding their way around the Premier League's PSR rules, and so have another club.
Yes, we come to AFC Bournemouth, who are back in 8th position. I think there's a bit of a scrap for 8th position, and the Europa Conference and the joys of how do you get to Greenland on a Thursday night, going through the minds of quite a few fans at present. As we are aware, Bournemouth were sold by their former owner, Maxim Denim, which I think sounds a bit like an 80s indie band. And he had been a very benevolent owner of AFC Bournemouth and had lent the club an awful lot of money, interest-free, as part of the acquisition of Bournemouth Football Club by Black Knight and Bill Foley. He agreed to write off £71 million of what was owed to him. Now, under normal rules, if an owner has lent money to a club and they decide to walk away from that loan, then you cannot include that as part of your PSR calculations. And this actually goes back to a certain extent to Queen's Park Rangers in 2014 when their owners had done that. And they're, I won't say they're including it as part of pie sales, but they're including it as part of sort of broader revenue going into the calculations. It took 4 years to resolve that particular dispute between QPR and the EFL, and it resulted in a financial settlement because they felt the points deduction at the time was not appropriate. This deal appears to circumvent that precedent and also the Premier League rulebook itself because it is deemed to be part of the takeover. So Maxim Denin says, I'm writing off these loans because the club is being acquired by a new owner. So therefore, Bournemouth's expenses or Bournemouth's revenue, however you want to describe it, have improved by £71 million. Had that not been the case, I think there's a fair chance that Bournemouth would have exceeded the PSR limit. And first of all, it's the rule book that's the issue here. The rule book does not appear fit for purpose. And what I can't understand, unless this is a deliberate policy of the Premier League, is why was the rule book not stress tested? I know people that work in regulation. I don't take any pride in it. When I teach creative accounting, and I've done this in Wall Street and I've done this in Canary Wharf and so on, I never feel particularly comfortable about it. But what I'm trying to say is the rules are poorly drafted. These are the ways of and I certainly don't encourage it, but I say, because I'm normally teaching people who are analysing the numbers. So I might say, these are my red flags. These are the things that I'm always looking out for in terms when I'm trying to do an assessment of a business. But if I was involved in drafting the rules, what I would do is just get 3 or 4 lawyers and 3 or 4 accountants, lock them in a room for a weekend and say, just do what you can. Just see whether you can destroy these. What would you come up with? And I know the Premier League talk about that. That's costing money, but unfortunately, what it has resulted in is that the rules are now seen as a bit of a laughing stock, and it does not help the Premier League in their opposition to the independent regulator, because what the regulator will be able to argue is that our aim is to recruit staff who have a regulatory background and therefore are used to stress testing and are used to tightening up. So the Premier League, by all accounts, has just tightened up its rule book in relation to a similar issue to what we saw recently with Leicester City, where Leicester City were effectively neither in the Premier League or the EFL and therefore couldn't be attacked by either party. It just a good set of rules become that much more difficult to circumvent and will therefore have credibility. And as a result of that, the Premier League's legal costs are likely to go down because there will be fewer challenges.
Yeah. So, I mean, that just, even to me, that makes common sense. You spend a bit of money on the stress test and you save a lot of money further down the line. Yeah. The trouble is, of course, you don't know how much money you save down the line because the stress test has prevented the legal action. Just to clarify, though, Kieran, again, as with Chelsea, Bournemouth have done absolutely nothing wrong here, and this loan write-off has been approved by the Premier League.
As far as we're aware, yes, and certainly looking at it, they remember this was over a year ago, so I don't see that Bournemouth have done anything wrong whatsoever. They have merely applied the rules in their current form.
Now, Kieran, in the past we've talked a lot about the theory of football clubs changing their accounting date, and here we have it happening in practice. Yes,
Crawley Town, owned by our very good friends at WAGME United. WAGME, for those people not familiar with the term, stands for "We're All Gonna Make It." The crypto darlings of Sussex. They have invoked my favourite clause in the Companies Act 2006. Clause section 442, and it works for football clubs. If If Chelsea try it, presumably they'll be using clause 443 for Todd Bowley's benefit. But the way that the rules operate is that if you bring forward your accounting reference date, i.e., a set of accounts, most clubs will say, we're going to do our accounts to the year to the 30th of June or perhaps the 31st of July. So that's what referred to as your accounting reference date. If, however, you bring forward that date by 1 day, this is in UK legislation, again, nothing wrong by the club, that allows you to delay publishing your accounts by 3 months. And people might say, why on earth is this the case? The reason why this is the case is because a year is not 52 weeks long. And this was actually brought in to assist people in the retail industry. So if I'm the Apple store, if I'm Marks and Spencer's, a year is 365 days, or 366, it's 52 weeks and 1 day. That means that in some years, you might have 53 Saturdays. In most years, you'll have 52. As far as retailers are concerned, Saturday's your big day. So companies were therefore taking advantage of this, and they say, right, we're going to just produce 52 weeks worth of accounts every year. So we've got 52 Saturdays. So if I'm comparing 23 to 24, I've always got 52 Saturdays. So that was sort of the rationale behind the rules. That doesn't apply to football clubs. Football clubs, let's face it, they don't make any money in June because it's the end of the football season. So what we've got the what. I always think the value is in the why. Why are Crawley Town delaying publication of their accounts? And the simple answer is we don't know because the club's not put anything out. If the club owners want to get in contact with us, we've said in past. In my view, if you've got nothing to hide nothing. So why are you choosing to delay publication of your accounts by 3 months? We'd love to hear an answer from you, Crawley Town.
Yeah, we would. We've got a good relationship with them, so it would be interesting to hear. I'm guessing that there's no real point in sitting by the phone waiting, Kieran, because, well, there's no point in me waiting. No one trusts me to phone me up. It would be you or Guy, wouldn't it?
Well, I have had conversations with both owners before, which I won't. It was when they were first bought the club, and I found them to be too charming, if unusual. I'm unfamiliar with the sort of the culture that they come from. I do remember when I think Crawley had a few bad results, so one of the owners decided to come across. The advantage of Crawley Town, of course, it's very close to Gatwick Airport. So one of the owners came across from the United States, tried to give the squad a bit of a rousing speech, and then said, I've got a great idea to keep motivating you. I'm going to sit in the dugout alongside the manager. And the players are looking at each other, and the manager's going, oh, my holy moly. And this was fine. He was chatting away. They're genuinely nice guys. And by all accounts, after 40 minutes, he sidled up to the fourth official and said something along the lines of, hey, buddy, can you tell me how this substitution thing works?
Bless them. What sweet. It's just occurred to me, Kieran, that Greenland conversation, it's just percolated through the back of my head. As somebody who supports a club with an outside chance of getting into Europe next season, knowing our luck, that I'll be looking forward to that trip to Greenland, and suddenly Greenland is in America.
You need an American visa.
And you'll need it's a complicated old life, isn't it? Our penultimate story, Kieran, is one of the most bizarre and also, I think, sinister ones I've come across.
Yes. This is Charlton Athletic. Yeah. Again, I don't think... What is the relationship between Palace fans and Charlton? Is it they dislike you, but you're not bothered by them?
It's a more amicable rivalry than... again, because for historic reasons... They were in the Premier League while we were in the Championship for a lot of the time. They were a huge club in the 40s and 50s when we weren't. So there's no real. I mean, I mean, this is for another pod, Kieran, but it depends whether you define Palace as a South East London club or not. But Charlton fans tend to look across the river and downriver to Millwall rather than us. I mean, there's no love between us, obviously, but in recent years there's been two divisions between us. So I did once have when I was broadcasting there. I once had a bolt thrown at my head by a Charlton fan.
Blimey.
I know, it was on camera, but to his enormous credit, he came running up to me and said, "I'm so sorry, I've never done anything like that in my life before. I don't know what came over me." And he was so mortified that we ended up hugging it out. But then, as my producer said, he probably says that to everybody he throws a bolt at. It's the reason he hasn't been in court.
Yes.
But no, they're great. I mean, I don't think any football fan can fail to admire Charlton for what they did when they were, getting back to the Valley, which is incredible. When they set up their own political party, that was a fantastic piece of fan activism before fan activism was really invented. So, I'll sound patronising whatever I say. So let's move on.
My uncle Tom.
Oh yeah,
who's Uncle Terry's older brother.
Oh, yeah.
He had trials for Charlton, and he turned down the apprenticeship because he reckoned he could make more money as a watch repairer.
Is that what they called it? Yeah,
it involved timers anyway. Yeah,
of course it. Yeah, well, yeah. So Uncle Tom had trials with Charlton, and Uncle Terry had trials at Charlton. Yeah, very good.
Charlton's accounts came out recently, and they lost a lot of money, has to be said. And I was just sort of doing my sort of general, let's take a look to see if there's anything which piques my interest. And I always take a look at the audit report just to see what are they saying. And I go, oh, blimey, O'Reilly. The auditors said these accounts might be okay, or they might not. The purpose of an audit is for the accountants to go in, to take a look at the books and say, does it pass the smell test? Do these numbers make sense? And they do that, of course, by saying, well, have you got receipts for this? Have you got correspondence to back up this? You've done this valuation here. Who did it? What's their qualification? So it just, that's the nature of an audit, and that's absolutely fine. And that's how the profession works. Except in the case of Charlton, there was a cyber attack against the club. And again, I really must stress this to all clubs. There are people trying to cyber attack you every day. I work at university, and our security measures now are very, very significant because we've seen attacks on the NHS. We've seen attacks on public institutions, private institutions, and so on. And by all accounts, this cyber attack meant that a lot of data went missing, which meant that the auditors couldn't say whether the accounts needed adjusting or not, because there was nothing for them to look at. And to be fair to Charlton, if you go into the small print of their accounts, it does show that this was the case, and they acknowledge that. I think they got an insurance payout. It's unclear whether they paid the ransom to the cyber attackers, and that's what these people are. They're criminals, and they are using IT. And I think it's North Korea and Syria. Strange countries, perhaps countries that aren't well known for their ethical approach to many aspects of life, who are some of the biggest players in this particular industry.
Does this mean then, Kieran, the 23-24 accounts are legally null and void, or do they have to replay them? Do they have to put them in again?
No. They are the best guess. So if further evidence comes to light over the course of the next 12 months, then you might go and republish them. But this is Charlton effectively trying to piece together the numbers as best they can from the information and data which is available. So we're going to work on the basis that they're accurate, but we can't prove it. Doesn't mean that they're inaccurate, but there's no backup.
So the inference is that a lot of data has clearly disappeared then and can't be reclaimed.
On the basis of this, given that the accounts only were published at the start of April, you would have thought that if there was an opportunity to get back that information, it would have taken place already.
Crikey. Okay. Our final story, Kieran, and I'm always reluctant to say this, but could be a glimmer of hope for Inverness Caledonian Thistle fans.
Yes, the administrators have now said that there is a preferred bidder. That preferred bidder is a guy called Alan Savage. I think it's fair to say that he's a big Cali Thistle fan himself. I believe he's put in more than £1 million this season. And my concern was that when Cali Thistle went into administration, the first thing that the auditors tend to say, so the first thing that the administrators say before they take the job is, who's going to pay our wages? And I suspect that Alan Savage has been behind the scenes providing financial support. He does appear to be the person who is therefore going to acquire the club. And if so, what can we say? We wish him all the best going forwards. Inverness is Scotland's fifth biggest city. It deserves a football club and deserves the attention that brings.
It is good news, Kieran. I am going to say that because we didn't necessarily reflect this in our broadcasting of it, but there were real fears that Cali were up against it, weren't there? Not just a few weeks ago, it looked like they were going to go under. Yeah,
I was quite twitchy at one stage.
Yeah.
I was aware of his interest. Whether that was going to crystallise into financial support, given that he'd already put money into the club, was at that point in time, I think, unknown. But getting the club out of administration is good. It's still a shame, yet many creditors will be unpaid on the back of this, I strongly suspect. But I think for Cali Thistle fans who've had some tough times on the pitch in recent years, this can be a good step forwards.
Yeah. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, a monthly chat with Kieran and I, and much, much more. And you can do that by going to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, on our regular Tuesday questions pod, then go to questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, X, and find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Friday. We've got an interview on Friday with Kyle Shestak, who is an investor into Dorking Wanderers. And amongst other things, Kyle told us that he learned a lot about English football by listening to The Price of Football.
Yes.
Good to hear.
Yes,
so
that is good.
Yeah, well, slightly worrying to hear as well, but there you are. Hopefully it's you he's listening to rather than me, because that would be disastrous.
You might have an interest in 70s indie bands as well.
That's true.
That's listening to Price of Football, to be fair to him.
We'll see if he's wearing a Joy Division t-shirt next time.
That's right.
Otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday with that questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always to everybody for interacting with us across so many means. For all of our secret suppliers of stories as well, we tip our hat to you, and as always, we would never betray your confidence. If you want to support the show, there's a variety of ways of doing so. One of which is to come along and see us in Rotherham on the 28th of April. We're delighted that John Crute, the Chief Executive of Chesterfield Football Club, and also congratulations for John, who's just won CEO of the Year in League Two. So fantastic effort. So if you're a Spirite and you fancy coming along, we're going to have a chat to John about how Chesterfield have been one of the most transparent clubs, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the data they put out, the trials and tribulations of being in the National League as well. And also, if you've got any interest in South Yorkshire football or any other football, we're more than happy to have a chat about the current position at Sheffield Wednesday, the the points deduction that happened at the start of the season against Sheffield United, which really has gone under the radar,
totally,
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
and any other clubs, we're prepared to do that up on stage, and we're more than prepared to do that afterwards. I suspect we might be in the bar for a half an hour at least.
We'll be in the bar till it closes, Kieran.
Oh, yes.
Half an hour, no, half an hour. All right. We'll look forward to seeing you there, and we'll look forward to you listening to us next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.
This is Ali Maxwell from Not the Top 20 podcast, the number one EFL podcast covering the Championship, League One and League Two. Every Monday, our show is teeming with talking points and surprise results. These leagues and the characters within them are unpredictable and constantly entertaining in their nature. And we never have to speak about VAR. Subscribe to Not the Top 20 podcast on your preferred podcast platform and dive into the best, most in-depth EFL analysis around.